My name's Toby Lepeti-Mesme, and welcome to part of my Race for Congress 2022 coverage. Over the following year, we are going to be delving into all the details of the race for control of Congress in 2022 in the midterm elections this time next year. Now, of course, as of right now, the Democrats hold both the House and the Senate on wafer-thin margins. In order for power to switch, you would only need to see 3 to 5 seats go in the House and 1 Senate seat flip. And just like that, you have a Republican-controlled Congress. And of course, this would have massive ramifications for Joe Biden's presidency, for the tone of politics heading into the 2024 presidential race, and of course the 2023 off-year elections. We're currently digesting the results of the 2021 off-year elections, which were dire for Democrats, indicated a 12-point swing in Virginia, a D plus 10 state, so you have a Republican governor by 2 points. And broadly, it looks absolutely like, going into the midterms, Republicans have both historical precedent and momentum on their side. Now, coming up soon, we will be looking in depth at the strengths and weaknesses each party has as of right now, a year out from the race. Of course, a lot can happen. And you can read about that on Toby Joshua Politics on Medium. We'll be doing that soon. And also, up there now, there is an introductory article taking you through the premise of this series. In today's episode, today's bit of coverage of the Race for Congress 2022, I want to talk about, as of right now, the leaders, the congressional leaders of the two main parties in Congress. I want to talk about them because, like it or not, they set the tone and the agenda, often against the will of some of their members of their caucus. They set the tone for the campaign and for what happens, basically. Of course, right now, in the majority, the Speaker and the Majority Leader, Pelosi and Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they not only set the tone, they set the legislative agenda and are responsible for putting through President Biden's agenda through Congress on these wafer-thin margins. And you've obviously got Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, both of whom hope this time next year they'll be looking at majority control in Washington. So we're going to look at each of these leaders in turn. We'll start with Nancy Pelosi. She's by far the most notorious. She's by far the one with the longest serving, but also the largest public profile. Has been a symbol in American politics since 2003, has been Speaker for, this would be her 4th total term as Speaker, has been Minority Leader or Democratic Leader for upwards of 20 years, will be 20 years by 2023. This is Nancy Pelosi here, talking about the 2022 midterms back in August.
I always run from behind. You always have to run from behind, so I have no comment about my colleague except to say he's a great chair of the DCCC, Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney of the state of New York. And again, you never run from the best case scenario. There are several scenarios here. That was one of them, and I think that's a safe place to run from.
So that's Nancy Pelosi talking about holding the House in 2022. The math for Democrats is not exactly hopeful as of right now. If we want to look at the composition of the House as of right now, you've got 221 Democrats, you've got 213 Republicans. Nancy Pelosi has been the leader, as I say, for nearly 20 years. She, as of right now, will not say whether she will remain leader or not. Now, the thing about Nancy Pelosi is she is actually quite a good individual for Republicans to attack. That when you hear Republicans, House Republicans, talk about unseating the Democrats from majority status, you hear almost as much mention of Pelosi and getting rid of Pelosi as you do about Biden and how terrible Biden is. And, for instance, you don't hear that about Chuck Schumer. Nancy Pelosi is a hate figure for Republicans in a way that is very effective for them. She's unpopular. She has strongly negative approval ratings. She's at least as negative as Donald Trump was when he was unpopular in the presidency. She may be lower than that now. She hardly has a stable political base. She won't say whether she'll run again, as I say. And the thing about that is, from everything we've heard, she's looking to legacy. She's looking to, can she pass some of the Build Back Better legislation? And I would imagine after that, we'll hear whether she'll stay for another term. Considering she's facing the prospect, after 20 years, of an uphill battle to keep control of the House, an uphill battle, not an impossible battle, but a strongly uphill battle with the odds slanted against you. In all likelihood, if she stood for another term, 23 to 25, she would very likely be in the minority, leading in the minority, which is never a great place to be, but particularly after you've been Speaker, it's a bit of a damp squib compared, you would imagine, in terms of responsibility and in terms of public profile. I can't see. I mean, she's 81 now. She is the definition of a career politician. She's been around sort of the greasy wheel of Washington for many decades. Of course, she is a bought and paid for, identikit corporate politician. She's been in, the swamp that is Washington for far too long. She has spent her career as leader and as speaker basically deriding progressives and deriding progressive policy goals and shilling for the establishment. She, again, is, in my view, politically a liability for Democrats in 2022. I don't think she helps Democrats. I think, obviously, she has a certain skill at the legislative process, not at the politics of it. She's done so many unpopular sellout deals. However, you just need to see how Democrats performed in 2010 to know about that, know about what she's capable of presiding over. However, she obviously has a certain skill at sort of knowing what to do in Congress. She's been around a long time. The thing about Nancy Pelosi is, as I say, unpopular, epitome of the establishment. Without her as leader, going into 2022, you've neutralized one attack line from Republicans. That's not how you hold the House. I think, we all know as of right now, it's very unlikely Democrats keep the House. We can talk about that in another episode. But my position on Pelosi is, if she's resigning, that is a net positive for House Democrats in 2022. Almost certainly. Because they can't talk about Pelosi anymore then. I'm sure they'll try, but they can't as effectively talk about Pelosi. Now, on to Kevin McCarthy, the House Minority Leader. Wants to be Speaker in 22. This is him here.
I would bet my house. Listen, we were 31,751 votes. My personal house. Yeah. Don't tell my wife, but I would bet it. Listen, do you want to retire Nancy Pelosi?
Hell yeah.
Do you want to end the socialism in this country? Win the House, 5 seats, the closest. This is the smallest majority the Democrats have had in 100 years. We could do it.
Jim Banks, by the way, both of you.
That was at CPAC 2021. Not a convention I very often listen to content from, but the point there is true. It is exceptionally easy for Republicans, considering they have an inbuilt advantage because of gerrymandering. Democrats need to be about 6 points ahead, 5 points ahead nationally to hold their own. They lose 5 seats, they're gone. Kevin McCarthy, as of right now, if he can hold, the biggest challenge for him is holding the House Republican caucus together. If he can do that, if he can retain the loyalty of Donald Trump, he's almost a shoo-in for Speaker in 2022. Save political wins going in a dramatically different direction. If you had Democrats that were materially delivering for the working class, Democrats could expand their legislative majorities if they were actually doing the things they always say they'll do and never actually do, and weren't beholden to corporate power. Of course, historical precedent is made to be broken. Democrats could do that, but Biden is seriously unpopular. Democrats aren't delivering. Apathy is setting in. Kevin McCarthy will, at that point, he's likely to be the next speaker. He's likely to be a very significant figure in American politics in a way many people aren't ready to reckon with, I think. And the thing about that is, is he a net positive or a net negative? He'll definitely be around in 22. He's been trying to be speaker since 2018. He is able to bring and lean into the Trump style of politics. The question is, can he do that and keep on side the whole of the House GOP caucus? It's moving to the right. It's moving to the right further in 22 in the House because it's very reactive. So I think, yes, you're going to have one of the furthest right Republican speakers of the House since Newt Gingrich in Kevin McCarthy, in quite a sinister way. But I think that's what we're heading for. Now, on to McConnell, Mitch McConnell. Now, the thing about Mitch McConnell...
Well, I do think we need to be talking about the future and not the past. I think the American people are focusing on this administration, what it's doing to the country, and it's my hope that the 22 election will be a referendum on the performance of the current administration, not a rehash of suggestions about what may have happened in 2020.
Now, the thing about Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is people don't like Mitch McConnell. Democrats don't like Mitch McConnell. Independents don't like Mitch McConnell. Republicans don't particularly like Mitch McConnell. Most elected Republicans aren't very much fans of Mitch McConnell. Sure, he's got his power bases. Sure, he knows what he's doing. He's the master filibuster king. He is the denizen, the figurehead of white minority rule in the Senate. However, people don't like him. The Trump wing of the Republican Party doesn't like him. So the thing there for McConnell is no. He is obviously a net negative to Senate Republicans. He is the Republicans' Pelosi. Democrats will run ads about keeping McConnell out of power. The thing about McConnell is the Senate is such an unrepresentative, anti-democratic, not undemocratic, anti-democratic, minority rule-based institution. He already has, an exorbitant amount of power, even though he's in the minority, albeit in a 50-50 Senate, but it would be the same if it was 53-47, for example. It'd be practically the same. He doesn't need to win the country. They can trail the Democrats in votes and win the majority. So what people think of Mitch McConnell actually doesn't matter. He could well be majority leader again. Might not be, but he could be. It is, of course, a taller order than taking the House, which is a cakewalk if the Republican Party can hold itself together and Democrats continue to fail to deliver. Now, finally, the one we talk about the least, really, although, one of the three most powerful individuals in America, Chuck Schumer.
Now, Madam President, on Build Back Better. We had a productive weekend as we continue to close in on a final agreement for President Biden's Build Back Better plan. Yesterday morning, I traveled to Delaware to meet with the President and Senator Manchin about our agenda.
I'm sure that's going well, and you're definitely not making terrible choices. But anyway, Chuck Schumer, Senate Majority Leader, still feels a little bit. I've only just adapted to that. Really, it was certainly quite discombobulating and strange seeing the roles switch on January the 20th. Obviously welcome that Mitch McConnell wasn't in the majority anymore, but still, it doesn't quite feel real, does it? And in many ways it isn't. It's a 50-50 Senate. Joe Manchin could defect at any point. We could be dealing with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell by Christmas. If this all goes to pot, who knows? But Chuck Schumer is basically a non-entity. He's not a very powerful politician. He's not a very effective politician. He is scared of the progressive wing of the party. That's good, obviously. We've got him shook. The reason for that is primary challengers in 22, the growing slate of progressives in New York. They've had a few knocks, but they are a growing force still. They are still on the up in New York, whatever you hear from the media. So the thing about Chuck Schumer is he is a non-entity. He is performative. He is not actually getting any of the things done and showing any of the sufficient ruthlessness you need to rule and get democratic priorities through, working class priorities through in a 50-50 Senate. He's straight from the world of liberal elite corporate politics, right? He is the Ted Cruz of the Democratic Party. He's just a machine politician that sucks up all the corporate money that you could possibly imagine. However, he isn't, he's basically he will ride the wave of what happens for Democrats. Democrats could do with a much more substantial Senate leader. Whatever happens politically, whatever happens because of the Biden administration, above all else, is what will decide whether he's in the majority or the minority after 2022. And in many ways, that is the guy that there's one individual that everyone is running on, right? Whose popularity will decide everyone's fate, will decide McCarthy's fate, will decide Pelosi's fate, Schumer's, McConnell's, and that's Joe Biden. Joe Biden's popularity, the sense of momentum behind Joe Biden, and how the country feels about Joe Biden's agenda will define, above all else, what happens in November 2022. So in many ways, this is the contradiction at the end of this video. Should we actually be looking at the leaders, or should we be looking at the approval ratings of Joe Biden? Now, we can do that. Right now, they're dire. They're worse than Obama's at this point. They're about as bad as Trump's at this point, possibly worse. They're about as bad as you could possibly be. The fact they're worse than Obama's, and Obama then went on to be absolutely shellacked, in his words, in 2010, bodes very badly for 2022 for Democrats. Republicans are talking up, wins of epic proportions, unassailable majorities for years to come. We will have to wait and see, and we will, and that's what this series is all about. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you very soon for more.